Castlevania Rondo of Blood is another really interesting installment in the Castlevania series, because it's taken many forms in the franchise's long life. This was the next game released after Super Castlevania 4. I decided to review Castlevania Bloodlines before this, despite it releasing after, simply because I thought that game was more of a side thing and this one felt more climactic and important by comparison. So I went with doing this game last before I'd take a break from these games. But anyway. At first, Rondo of Blood was released for the PC Engine CD in 1993 in Japan only. In the West, the PC Engine was known as the TurboGrafx-16. It didn't have the audience that Sega or Nintendo had, but it was a console that existed for a few years in the early 90s. It had a CD add-on in all regions, but for some reason Rondo of Blood just did not release outside of Japan. Which was quite a shame because many consider Rondo of Blood to be the greatest classic Castlevania game ever made, taking all the lessons from the previous games and making a really refined and focused gameplay experience. Instead of localizing this game, Konami had a different game based on the original made for the Super Nintendo. This was called Castlevania Dracula X. It stars the same protagonist in a fight against Dracula and some of the same music, but as we'll get into later, you can tell early on this game is entirely different from the original. Rondo of Blood has since been made available in many ways, like how it was released worldwide on the Wii digital storefront in the late 2000s. It also got a 2.5D remake for the PlayStation Portable in the mid-2000s called Castlevania the Dracula X Chronicles. So what's the easiest way to play the game in 2025, you ask? Well, it was released alongside its direct sequel, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, in a collection called Castlevania Requiem. But unlike every other modern Castlevania collection, which came out on all platforms, Requiem was a PlayStation exclusive. You can only download it on the PS4 and PS5. It also doesn't have any of the convenient features the other new collections have. And that's because it was a pretty simple package, and here's why. In Dracula X Chronicles, you could unlock an emulated and translated version of Rondo of Blood, as well as a redubbed version of Symphony of the Night. Requiem is just these emulated versions of Rondo and Symphony sold again. And apparently, from what I looked up, PlayStation are the ones who got Konami to release this collection, and that's why it's exclusive to PS4 and 5. For what it's worth, the collection isn't bad or anything, it's just very bare bones. I could have played Rondo by getting a ROM of the original game and getting a translation patch, but I figured that since I've actually owned Requiem for many years now and just never played it, I may as well play Rondo on it. My PS5 was already plugged into the living room though, and I was too lazy to undo it and set it up in the office, so I just grabbed my PS4 for the first time in over a year and used that. This video will mainly focus on Rondo of Blood, but I will talk about what I played in the other variations of it too. Since this game's original release wasn't in the US, I figured we could skip the dramatic manual reading this time. But even then, taking a look at the box for Dracula X and the manual, it's become a lot more generic and less humorous than before, much more matter-of-fact in both. But I did want to highlight Richter's character profile in the SNES manual. Like, why is bro looking at us like that?
You're really scaring me, man.
But I'm sure we all get the point of these games by now. Dracula returns every 100 years, so the story picks up in 1792, and it's that time of the century. Dracula and his castle are back to wreak havoc upon Transylvania, and it's up to Richter Belmont to stop Dracula, wielding the family's vampire killer whip. Richter being a direct descendant of Simon Belmont from the first two games, but Richter's battle with Dracula is a little more personal than previous Belmonts because his girlfriend, Annette, alongside other hostages were taken by Dracula so he can feast on their blood. That's an extra detail added to the usual story, but it's still a pretty basic Classicvania plot. Dracula's back, a Belmont's gonna stop him, play these levels, get through the castle, kill Dracula, save the day, you know the drill. The visual quality and art in this game were way beyond the previous ones. The variety in the visuals and the kinds of effects and the sprite animations in this game all look fantastic, from the fiery backgrounds of the opening stage, to the way the cross spins when you throw it, to the boss intro animations. This game looks really great, and the music is stellar. I have the same comments on the music every time now, but it's like the people who did the soundtracks for these games followed a simple formula. Make amazing banger remixes of Vampire Killer, Bloody Tears, and Beginning, and then make excellent, instantly iconic new music that joins those famous tracks in the pantheon of great Castlevania music. That's exactly what Rondo does. These are my favorite versions of these NES tracks so far. Especially that Vampire Killer remix, since it starts off with this foreboding opening, making you think, oh man, what's this level gonna be like? And then the music really kicks in. But then it goes from that to a remix of Stalker, another track from Castlevania 1. And then, like I said, the new music is perfect in this. The whole soundtrack making great use of CD quality audio to deliver the goods. The only critique I have is that, like many early CD games, the music doesn't loop, it just stops when the track ends and starts over again, but still, fantastic music nevertheless. Looking at the gameplay, it might look like a typical Classicvania on paper, and in many ways it is. You have several stages, with those stages divided into acts. The acts are checkpoints, but if you get a game over, you have to do the whole stage again. But this game has a save feature where you input your name on the menu and can resume progress from any point in the game. When you're actually playing as Richter, many improvements have been made too. Like how when you collect a new sub-weapon while already having one, the old one does not disappear, it just falls to the ground. You can recollect it if you'd rather use that. This is a pretty handy-dandy feature. But the best thing is that they removed the whip level-up system. I never had a problem with it in previous games, but when it's gone, you really don't miss it. In previous games, you needed to collect a Morning Star to make the whip more powerful and another one to increase its range. If you died, you lost them both, but those would often drop almost immediately after death, so it would take all of 2 seconds to be back to max power. Rondo decided to just skip that whole thing and make the whip max range at default, which is much appreciated. Richter also doesn't have the mobility of Simon from Part 4. That was a one-game deal. You can still control your jumps in midair, but can't aim the whip anywhere but forward. I liked how 4 controlled, but I do get why some would feel it was too powerful, like my comments from the Part 4 video have told me. So I can enjoy it either way. Well, Richter can backflip though, but I didn't use that much. The first main stage takes place in one of the towns from Castlevania 2, and you'll want to be on your toes throughout. Though it's certainly the easiest stage in the game, and the one where you'll think, oh, I've got a handle on this. Maybe this one's easier than the others. Especially with this boss fight where you toss axes at him and he's toast in no time. But I was quickly humbled by the part in stage 2 where you approach the castle. You had birds flying in from every which way, and these knight dudes throwing axes at an angle where Richter couldn't dodge them simply by ducking under them. You had to pay more attention and attack and counterattack more consciously than previous games, which I thought made for an interesting increase in the difficulty. Enemies also hurt like hell in this game and can send you flying back, so be on your guard, because I did not think this game was easy by any means. But I did think it was fair, as we'll get into later. If you want to make the game easier though, level 2 comes with a cool secret. In this chase sequence, you'll see a key drop to the ground, and you need to collect it and use it on this cell in the underground portion. Here you'll find a 12-year-old girl, Maria Renard, about to be sacrificed, and you save her. But it turns out that she's also a vampire-killing descendant and is adamant that she's going to join Richter on his mission. When you get a game over, you'll be given the option to switch characters, and after getting a game over on the werewolf boss in stage 2 a couple times, I figured I'd give Maria a shot. And holy moly, she makes short fucking work of almost everything in the game. She's a much smaller target than Richter, so you can easily avoid the axes from the knights by ducking, and you can do something similar for virtually every enemy in the game. But then her mobility and controls are night and day compared to him. Maria attacks with these doves that fly in an arc, so they do roughly 2 hits per each press of the attack button, and you can shoot 2 at once, so you can do like 4 hits in the amount of time it takes Richter to do 1. Plus, Maria can double jump and easily bypass several segments of gameplay like that. Take level 4 for example. Richter needs to jump onto this switch to force this spike thing to attack you, but you need to jump on top of it before it does damage to you, and jump from it to avoid the swinging spike ball. Maria can just double jump over that whole thing. She can double jump over many things that Richter would need to carefully get through. For example, he'd need to carefully time his way through these swinging obstacles, when Maria can just slide through them. She can get crazy speed doing this too. It's like dashing in Mega Man X or something. And her special weapons are insanely OP. Like a dragon you send flying at enemies for massive damage, or 2 birds you can send out diagonally. The mini-boss of stage 5 as Richter might take a minute, but as Maria, it ends in seconds. I know Maria is meant to be the easy mode of the game, but in general I just thought she was more fun to play as. The speed, the power, the attack range, I thought it was all really satisfying. I don't feel like it made most of the stages a cakewalk by any means though. In stages 3 and 5 in particular, playing them as Maria still forced me to recognize enemy patterns and react accordingly. Rushing through blindly still got me killed many times, so you take your time and learn what you're doing after a few runs, and then you can blitz through in highly satisfying fashion. In fact, it made level 5 in this pirate ship my favorite one to play because the enemies do take a lot of damage, and they have decent range and are supported by aerial enemies, so you have to react fast, but do it in a thoughtful way as to not take a lot of damage. The boss would often kill me at the last second, but on my final run I tore through the stage lightning fast and beat the boss without taking damage and got a huge point bonus for it. All this is to say that I thought Rondo of Blood is a challenging game, but one that's fun to complete. I couldn't really say that about Dracula X, the SNES game, though. I was wrong to call it a downport in my previous video because as I learned by playing it, Dracula X is an entirely different game. It still stars Richter Belmont going to fight Dracula and rescue Annette, but even the first level is different. It's a burning village with the same music, but it's not the town from Castlevania 2 and it has a totally different level design. What I did like about Dracula X was that it features a lot of great visuals and music. The music properly loops in this version and converts CD quality tracks from Rondo onto the SNES, and they came out of that transition sounding pretty good. Games like Dracula X really go to show the SNES was capable of quite a lot, visually speaking. Not all the animations are as fluid as the original Rondo, but many enemy sprites and attacks are lifted straight from the original and look pretty good here. The drawback with Dracula X is that the level design just didn't feel super compelling to me. There were many moments that felt do or die, or felt like you had to engage with it in one specific way, or you get hit and probably die and get a game over and redo the whole thing. They kept the concept from Rondo where alternate paths would take you to different levels, and I liked that, but still, none of the level design was amazing here. Some bosses felt really long and drawn out with attacks coming from all over the screen, and I just didn't really enjoy what I played of it as much. The final boss is a good example. It uses the same attacks as the final battle of Rondo, but in the original, Dracula and his attacks are always on screen, but in Dracula X, you're on these pillars with pits between them and he can be off screen at multiple moments. That felt emblematic of the whole experience. It's like Rondo, but just not as much fun or as fair. Plus, you don't even unlock Maria as a playable character in X, so it feels like a lesser adaptation of Rondo of Blood, not a port. By comparison, Castlevania the Dracula X Chronicles, despite sharing a naming scheme with the SNES game, is a very faithful version of the original. This is just a remake of Rondo of Blood with 3D graphics and expanded storytelling for the PSP. Think of it like Mega Man Maverick Hunter X, another PSP remake I've talked about a lot in my show before, where it's basically all the same level design and gameplay but in 16:9 widescreen and with 3D graphics. The music's all remixed and sounds pretty great, and the gameplay is faithfully done. Richter and Maria play the same as they did in the PC Engine game and use the same cool special weapons and fight the same bosses and all that good stuff. Because, if you enjoyed Rondo, you would no doubt enjoy Dracula X Chronicles, however, I enjoyed my time with the original game more. I just think the pixelated graphics have more charm and are more aesthetically pleasing than this low-poly 3D version. And the expanded story elements are fine and to be expected from a PSP remake of a classic game, but it's not like it really adds that much. It was kind of in one ear and out the other for me, since I'm not really playing these games for story anyway. But again, Dracula X Chronicles is a good game because it's a faithful recreation of Rondo of Blood, which is a good game. It also comes with an English version of the original and a redubbed version of Symphony of the Night, like I said at the beginning. So 2000's players got a lot of value for buying the game, and I respect that. I also love the art for this game too, matching the detailed art design of Symphony of the Night really well. So it has all that going for it, but like I said, I like the original the most, which is why this video is just focusing on that one. I last left off on Stage 5, which was fitting because it's around Stage 6 when you get to the endgame territory. Stage 6 doesn't have level design to avoid, instead it's a cool segment where you fight a bunch of bosses from Castlevania 1, complete with a remix of the boss theme from that game. You just have to do it in one health bar and only get one health pickup throughout the entire thing. The attack patterns are nothing like the original game though, so you're gonna get your butt kicked here. As Richter, I couldn't even make it past like the second or third boss. Unsurprisingly, Maria's double jump and attack range and special weapons and super small hitbox makes it way easier, especially when the mummy summons platforms to avoid, but I still did die a few times to it, so take that for what it's worth. Stage 7 is the last main level, and I just happen to be Maria, and it's a clock tower stage, and I'm sure you can imagine that her superior platforming ability also made quick work of it, especially the part at the beginning where you're getting chased and the platforms are crumbling. Much easier with her. What's also worth noting about this level is that you can find an optional bird enemy hiding a key. This key unlocks the cell Annette is in, which is also completely optional. There are other hostages to rescue which require going on alternate routes in earlier stages to reach different ones where they're hidden. I didn't know that until I already beat the game though, but I did know there were alternate pathways. I discovered that by accident. Like in level 3, I kept getting my ass kicked in embarrassing ways by this bone enemy, and then I dropped into this pit by accident thinking I was gonna die, but discovered a different route to the boss, which was pretty cool. And just overall, another thing to appreciate about Rondo. It gives you a lot of replay value, even when you're not looking for it. But yeah, Stage 7 was still tough if you ask me, because these knight guys and their huge swords were not messing around. And the boss with the giant bone dragon things was also a test of your platforming and timing skills. But once that's out of the way, you've made it to Dracula. As you might expect, Maria makes very short work of him. I almost killed him first try without even knowing the strategy. I thought that would be lame, so I intentionally got a game over so I could do it as Richter, and then came back to do it as Maria after to get footage of her ending too. Once I did know the strategy, I took next to no damage and nearly cleared the second phase's health bar before it even appeared on the screen when playing as Maria, but as Richter, the final boss is a fun challenge. Every time Dracula appears, you need to throw your cross so it hits him in the head and then avoid the fire. As I've been saying, Richter is a bigger target, so you can't just duck out of the way of these fireballs. Dracula throws 3 at a time, and you need to hit the bottom one with your whip and quickly duck so you can avoid the one in the middle. It's all a cool timing challenge. Sometimes they'll throw balls of destruction at you, and then you need to duck to avoid the top one and then jump quickly to get past the bottom one. Once you master that, the first phase becomes easy. The second phase will jump around and do massive damage on contact, so you need to get hits in when he's in range and then run to the other side of the screen when he's getting close to you, or else you'll be boxed in and probably die. His fire and electric attacks are easy to dodge, so that was good. All told, it took me like 40 minutes to figure out the final boss, and I really enjoyed the process. In the end, Dracula dies yet again, the day is saved, and all is right with the world in either ending, bringing Castlevania Rondo of Blood to a close. By the end, my thought was, shock of all shocks, that this game was pretty sick. When I covered Super Castlevania 4, I was met with a lot of comments that said they didn't think the game held a candle to Rondo of Blood, and I can definitely see why Rondo is such a fan favorite of the classic Castlevania games. It really feels like the culmination of everything the series had done up to this point. Tough but rewarding level design, unforgiving bosses, useful special weapons, a short but replayable campaign, a main character who is as fun as ever, and a new one that makes the game easier but is also really fast-paced and fluid to play as. I really can't think of anything that Rondo gets wrong, when I could see why some would think the controls of Super made the game too easy. For that reason, I think Rondo is probably my favorite game in the series so far. I'll probably revisit this game in the coming months and years like I already have for Castlevanias 1 through 4. And it helps that there are multiple valid ways to experience Richter's original adventure. Like, Castlevania Dracula X recently got put in one of the newer Castlevania collections, so that game is also available on new platforms. I'm partial to the original, but still, the other alternatives are still pretty cool. But that's about all I have to say on this game. I'm now going to take a break from talking about Castlevania for a bit, but when I come back to it, it'll be to talk about Symphony of the Night and Castlevania 64 right after. For all those who wondered if I was going to do Symphony or not. Hope that puts that worry to rest. It just won't be next, because I want the topic to feel fresh when we do get back to it. But that's about all the time we have for today, so I'm going to close the video by saying what I always do. If you made it this far into the video, you've seen everything. Go outside. And what's funny about that is that I threw that Sly reference in at the very last second of writing this video because I realized I didn't write any Sly references into the script, but then when I was driving home after having recorded this voiceover, before I started editing this voiceover, I thought of doing that "you're really scaring me, man" thing from Sly 1 about the manual. It was like a light bulb went off in my brain. So now there are just 2 Sly references in one video. Can never have too many.
Second verse, same as the first.